This video is going to be my preview of the Detroit Lions' visit to LA to take on the Los Angeles Chargers in Week 10. These two teams appear to be pretty well matched, if you ask me, on multiple levels. Even though the Lions come in at 6-2, coming off of their bye as well, and the Chargers are obviously 4-4. Both of these teams are averaging 25 points per game in 2023. Those numbers are good enough to get each offense in the top 10. This preview is going to focus on the Lions defense against the Chargers offense. I have no idea what we're in for in terms of final score, total output. I don't really pay attention to the over-under or anything like that, to be honest with you. I look at the film and look at some stats and try to link the two as best I can based on the film that I've watched, which I can't watch every single game for the Chargers offense. I was able to watch 3 games completely. One glaring difference in these two teams' offenses, at least, is the Lions are 6th in the NFL at rushing yards per game. 131 team rushing yards per game, 4.3 yards per carry, while only allowing opponents, in terms of their defense, 614 total yards this year, or 3.7 yards per carry. Top 5 run defense in the NFL, probably top 3 if you ask me. It's been an incredible performance by Aaron Glenn's defense against the run particularly. The only outlier, obviously, is their Week 7 trip to Baltimore to play the Ravens, where they gave up 196 on the ground. Meanwhile, the Chargers' rushing attack is at 800 rushing yards through 8 games. So that 100-yard per game average looks pretty good. I think it's actually 101. But it's somewhat misleading, to be honest with you, because they exploded for 233 on the ground against the Dolphins in Week 1. Since then, the Chargers' rushing attack, even with the return of Austin Eckler, has been held below 90 yards total in 5 of 7 games. Now, they just beat the Jets 27-6, despite managing only 191 yards of total offense in that game. The Jets' defense is incredible. I think that's well documented. In terms of rushing the quarterback, they did sack Justin Herbert 5 times in Week 9, but they didn't force a turnover, but despite 3 times where the Chargers' offense put the ball on the ground. I'm going to start this preview in the wrong place for some people probably. I'm going to start by looking at the Chargers' run game versus Aiden Hutchinson and Lee McNeil, Alex Anzalone, and the really talented and tough front 6, front 7 that the Lions have. Depending on whether it's 21 personnel, 11 personnel, you're talking about a front 6 versus front 7. I've really only had the time this week to produce one preview for this game, so I'm going to do it long-form content. You have to let me know what you think of it. I really wanted to get a look at the Chargers defense. Joey Bosa and Khalil Mack have combined for like over 15 sacks. I think it's 16 sacks and 4 forced fumbles. Mack especially seems to be a guy who's putting up explosive performances certain weeks, and then others at least not giving you the statistical impact. Of course, he's got a 6-sack game against the Raiders, his former team. Early in the season, last week against the Jets, he had 2 sacks. I didn't get the time to look at their defense at all, so I really focused on the Chargers' offense. Let's take a look at their run game first and compare that film to how dominant the Lions' defense has been at times in that aspect of the game, stopping the run. I'm going to talk about Austin Eckler and Joshua Kelly, 2 guys who have combined for almost 600 yards rushing and 200 yards receiving through 8 games. Now, when I say receiving, that's really singular because Eckler has 200 yards receiving, and I think Kelly has 3 catches for 8 yards. So the threat of the running backs being used in the pass game appears right now to be totally different depending on which running back is in the game. So as a fan of the Lions, keep that in mind as you're watching the game. Eckler's in the game, very real possibility that you're looking at a screen or him being used to attack in the pass game to the boundary where we know Alex Anzalone will be, and he's been fantastic in boundary side coverage so far this year. Let's get to the film. Eckler has 18 catches in the 5 games that he's played. He's actually not producing with the same efficiency in the run game that he has throughout his career. We're only looking at 3.6 yards per carry, the lowest of his career. Joshua Kelly's actually outgained him on the ground. Even though he's played 3 more games, Kelly that is, he's only got 1 more carry on the season. I think it's 74 carries to 73. Eckler had 100 catches last year in 2022. I think he's got a 92 catch season and a 70 and 74. Pretty unbelievable. He's got 400 for his career. He's a weapon in the pass game. So as a Lions fan, when you're watching the game, I think you've got to kind of mentally include the the screen game, the pass game to the boundary, in with the run game concept. So in terms of Eckler only averaging 3.6 yards per carry, I think he's actually more effective than that when you take into account he's got 18 catches for 200 yards on the season already. Alex Anzalone's been spectacular in coverage to the boundary this season with very few exceptions. Him against Eckler, if you ask me, particularly on third downs like you see here against the Jets, where Eckler beats C.J. Mosley. It's an unsettled situation where Herbert is able to get out of the pocket, which he's pretty good at doing. I would compare him favorably to Geno Smith in that regard from the standpoint if you don't have rush discipline and you allow him to be able to step up and move out of the pocket like you see here, he can hurt you with his feet or moving, shifting out towards the sideline and finding Eckler. I think that's a big matchup. You can expect the Chargers to probably isolate Eckler one-on-one with Anzalone, and there's a lot of people who would say that's a bad matchup because of the number of catches that Eckler has. I disagree. I think Anzalone has played really well against running backs, and I would not expect the Lions to deviate from the boundary side coverages that they've used so far this year unless you see Keenan Allen lined up over there to the boundary. But from what I've seen in this film, and what we'll cover a little bit later, Keenan Allen, again, who has 62 catches on 83 targets this year, so you're looking at like 75% catch rate, is being moved around a lot. He's in the backfield some, he's in the slot some, not really lining up as the X to the boundary and just creating one-on-ones. And if they do that, Cam Sutton's going to be over there anyway. So the Lions may stick to their typical coverage paradigm. Eckler is still very much a part of what the Chargers do, whether it's in the pass game like the first two plays I showed you or on the ground here, this little like short toss, I think, to the field. Interestingly, when the Chargers run this pin-pull version of pitch, actually not toss, it's to the field. A lot of the teams I see doing it now, particularly the Ravens, because I watch a lot of film of them, obviously, they're doing it to the boundary. But in terms of overall usage, Eckler's played 5 games. He's got 73 carries on the ground, 28 targets in the pass game, 18 completions, like I mentioned earlier. So through 5 games played, you're looking at 20 touches per game. That's a significant amount of touches for any player, particularly a running back, in his case, who's been with that team. I think now this is now his 6th season. This is a 3rd and 2, short pitch to the field. You can expect, as a Lions fan, Brian Branch to be down here to the bunch side and a part of the run fit. This is a difficult play to defend if you don't have a force player directly up into the bunch side, someone who's willing to come up and tackle. I think the Lions have plenty of those, Branch and Jerry Jacobs being 2 of them. Eckler's always been a difficult guy to bring down without wrapping him up, meaning he's so low to the ground, got such a low center of gravity. You can't just blast a shoulder in there or launch yourself into him. He'll bounce off and keep going through contact. You got to kind of wrap him up, in my opinion, and make sure that you get a hold of him, get control of his waist or thighs or below to be able to bring him down. You are going to have to tackle Austin Eckler tackle or cover him, I should say, 15 to 17 times each game. Again, you see this little pitch, quick pitch to the field, conceptually similar in that you've got a pin down by the wide receiver, a pull by the right tackle. It's a great job by 90, I think, Lawrence for the Cowboys. But the point I'm trying to make is to tackle him is a unique thing. Direct flow run stuff, however, at least in the film that I've watched, I've got 3 games. Cowboys, Titans, and Jets. Direct flow run stuff does not seem to be as effective for this Chargers team. It's more so perimeter-based runs or something irregular. I'll show you a trap play here in a moment. Additionally, split zone stuff. I would call that somewhat irregular in terms of it's not just stretch or inside zone where we're comboing up and beating you. These things have not been as effective, in my opinion, in the games that I've watched, and I admit up front that I've only watched 3 games. This is a 4th and 1 against the Titans. This is something what I would perceive as irregular. Joshua Kelly's in the backfield, and wide receiver Darius Davis is a dangerous guy. He's got an 87-yard punt return for a touchdown. I think he's got a 43-yarder, maybe 42, something like that. But this is a 4th and 1 against the Titans, and I would call it irregular because you got a reverse pivot by Herbert, A little bit unusual blocking scheme, if you ask me, from the standpoint of they're pulling the left guard. Pitch out to Davis on the edge, 12 yards on a 4th and 1. He's a dangerous guy with the football in his hands. I would say that he's someone that the Lions need to identify, whether he's in the backfield, in the slot, as a potential jet sweep guy. I think his yards per target, or whatever the correct acronym is, downfield is actually negative. So I think most of his catches are behind the line of scrimmage, and feel free to correct me if you've got more knowledge about that than I do. The Cowboys held the Chargers to 53 yards total on the ground. This is the type of, I would say, irregular play for 2023 in the NFL. It's a trap play. Now, Lions fans won't consider it irregular because Ben Johnson runs 2 or 3 different versions of this trap play. This isn't wham trap. It's just influence trap. So you can see they're a trap in the D tackle to the boundary side of the screen. Kelly's on here. You see how quick he is downhill. I feel like he's the more downhill runner for them at this point versus Eckler being someone that's used on the perimeter. That might be a gross oversimplification. I'm not sure if you've watched more film than I have. The difference in the usage here in terms of the trap play is Ben Johnson will call it on 3rd and 5, 3rd and 6, which is highly irregular or unusual in the NFL, versus this being a 1st and 10 influence trap that Kelly hits for 12 yards against the Jets, who are really good against pretty much everything. Otherwise, there are a lot of runs like these. 1 or 2 or 3 yard gains on things that are downhill, that are not irregular, like the reverse pivot pitch to Davis, the little quick pitch to Eckler that I showed you twice, the influence trap that I just showed you for Kelly downhill against the Jets. The run game, I don't feel like is just moving people. I don't feel like there's, when I watch it from the all-22 angle, which you can generally see from the side here, I don't see people being moved vertically downfield, and I don't see a lot of horizontal movement either. I feel like it sets itself up well for the Lions because I would say extremely good against the run. I feel like the Chargers are going to have to generate 80 to 85 yards organically in the run game to try to remain balanced, to not be forced into being one-dimensional because of how good this Lions defense has been against the run. They've had one game, like I mentioned before, where they really struggled to defend the run, and I don't think that the Chargers can recreate that element necessarily. And what I mean by that is the option game that the Ravens were able to utilize to really put defenders in conflict for the Lions. Let's take a look at some of the Lions run defense briefly. If you're a Lions fan, you're watching this, and you watch my content, you've surely seen some of these plays before. Hutchinson, I think, is spectacular against the run to his side. This is a sweep. He shouldn't be able to make this play the way that he does. You've got an outside sweep. It is into the boundary where, there's a shorter side of the field. There's less space there. Hutchinson here dealing with the tight end. You're generally thinking he's going to fight for outside leverage, try to beat the guy to the outside. No, he goes inside and still is able to make the tackle for a 2-yard loss. It's an amazing example of how athletic he is at 6'7", 270 pounds. The speed of the Lions defense, I think, is underrated, particularly after that Ravens game. I can understand why people would say that, but I think that's a gross mischaracterization. This is an option play. 2 running backs on the field for the Packers. They're leaving Hutchinson unblocked. The dive element is the first running back. Love keeps it. You have a tight end who's going to loop around to the field side. And what I talked about earlier, when Branch is to the field, you're talking about a real X factor. He's got the quarterback, forces the quarterback to pitch it, and then Cam Sutton, a violent finish here. I think there's a beautiful example of how this team supports each other at the 3 levels of the defense. D-line / outside linebacker, inside linebacker, nickel defenders at the 2nd level, and then corners and safeties at the 3rd level. Unfortunately, they're missing C.J. Gardner-Johnson. Mosley's out for the year again, unfortunately for him. But this has been a really consistent defense against the run, whether it's Hutchinson out on the edge, Branch and Sutton filling like you saw a moment ago. Aleem McNeil is having a great season, if you ask me, on the interior. So is Alex Anzalone, not just against the pass, but against the run. This is a guy who reads things quickly, and people would say diagnose play recognition. It's just reading. So those three things are synonymous for me, at least. I will generally refer to reads, but he reads things quickly. He gets downhill right now when he sees run. Sometimes a little too quick in terms of against the play action. I feel like Jack Campbell is way better at not getting as much downhill movement towards the line of scrimmage when it's play action, and then being able to get back out in his pass drops. But Anzalone, if you ask me, to the boundary and coverage, run reads to the field. Here you see him perfectly. Wherever, it's not just fitting where the running back is or where the running back ends up. It's fitting where the running back crosses the line of scrimmage at the same time. Now, talk about the line of scrimmage being the 34, all we want. Fine. But that thing moves in terms of the offensive line getting movement downfield, or in some cases, the defensive line getting pushed back into the backfield, like you'll see on the next play. Look where Anzalone meets the running back, right at the line of scrimmage. I feel like him and Jack Campbell, Derek Barnes is very underrated too, but I feel like him and Jack Campbell are exceptional against the run. This is a beautiful angle on a 4th and 1 stop where the Raiders go, hurry up, 11 personnel. There's multiple guys on the front side winning. Aleem McNeil is involved as usual. If you're a Chargers fan and you're watching this long, first of all, I appreciate that. So thank you very much. But Aleem McNeil is a name you're going to hear on Sunday. He's a super talented guy. I don't know what the difference is necessarily between this year and last year. I saw him playing well last year, particularly late in the season, but this year he's been spectacular. 4 sacks, great against the run, winning at the point of attack often. This is a very capable defense in terms of stopping the run. I would compare them favorably with the Jets, even though I know the Jets get more recognition for being excellent against defensively. I think it's going to be a huge factor. I understand that most people would start their preview talking about the pass, Herbert versus Goff, and I understand that. That's generally what people prefer to talk about. But this, for me, is one of the elements of the game that I think you could force the Chargers into being one-dimensional, and the Lions are very capable of doing that across the board. First level of the defense, second level of the defense, third level of the defense. Those guys get to the football and they tackle well. Had 1 week that I would consider an anomaly. All right. Second element to this that I think is important in this game is, you have to talk about it, Keenan Allen. Like I said, 75% catch percentage. He's a constant threat on design plays like this one or unscheduled stuff. Just a brilliant wide receiver. All that talk about him, when is he not going to be a number 1 wide receiver? I don't even use those designations. To me, I find them to be tired and boring. But you've got to provide resistance to him. You've got to make him work. And he'll still make plays even when you make him work. You certainly can't be outflanked this easily and leave him wide open. It's a great, if you ask me, opportunity here on this play for Herbert to give the ball to the running back or throw it out in the flats to Allen. Quite obviously, an attempt to outflank the defense. Number 2, for whatever reason, doesn't get over there and they don't switch it off in terms of this corner going with Allen and number 2's feet settling somewhere here and him playing Quentin Johnston. Things can't be that easy against Keenan Allen because he's going to make plays anyway. You've just got to make him work for it. He's really good on third downs. This is actually not a third down, though, to be honest with you. They're going to motion him into the boundary. His usage in some ways is similar to Amon-Ra St. Brown. I feel like St. Brown plays to the field more often than Keenan Allen does. But they'll put him in the backfield, and I'll show you a couple examples of that in a moment. Really great at the catch point. Strong hands, and then able to make people miss and get extra yards after the catch. I know there's yards after catch rating or average might not be fantastic, but this is a guy who does everything well, and when they need a third down conversion or they need to get away from the red zone like that play you just saw there, I feel like they go to Keenan Allen. It's a great catch on a 3rd and 4. It's a bunch set. He's in the slot, interior wide receiver to the top side versus the Jets, 3rd and 4. He loses whoever's supposed to guard him. It's either 22 or 30. Some type of mix-up with all this congestion in there in terms of the pick screen. You've got the point man, the tight end, is clearly releasing outside intentionally to allow Keenan Allen to get to the sideline. Herbert throws a great ball here. We got to give him credit. He throws a great ball. But it's an even better catch by Allen up the sideline to get the conversion. This is the type of play that he can make. There's nobody on him, don't get me wrong, but that's certainly not an easy catch to make, and he kind of makes them look routine, if you ask me. Used in the backfield often, to the boundary. The Lions do the same thing with St. Brown, like I said, and I feel like they're doing this to get him matchups that he can win consistently. If they do this, this will be Anzalone. You would think that this will be Cam Sutton to whatever side Keenan Allen goes to, and I'll talk about that matchup, Sutton versus Allen, a little bit more so in a moment. But I expect them to do this at times, move Allen around once they've determined what the Lions are doing. Is this smooth? I mean, it goes without saying, he's a smooth catcher of the football. Herbert and him seem to be on the same page in terms of timing and where the ball is located, where Herbert puts the ball for Allen to catch it. Doesn't get the first down here, but keeps things moving. Again, in the backfield versus the Titans, they're going to motion him to the boundary. Speed out is complete. Again, Herbert and him have exceptional timing on pretty much every route. He knows where he's going to be, knows where Allen wants the football. You can expect the Lions to try to get Cam Sutton to his side. And then the Chargers to do some of the stuff like this to try and create the matchup they want. I believe the Chargers will try to test the structure of the Lions' defense. Seahawks did the same thing with Lockett at times in Week 2. JSN's had the same motion as well in terms of lining up in the backfield and then being motioned out of the backfield to create a specific matchup. Allen up top. It's a 4th and 4 against the Titans in Week 4. It's man. It's an unsettled situation. It's actually a penalty on Simmons, the D-tackle. I guess he makes contact with the quarterback's helmet here. It looks to me like he's quite obviously being held, but that's not the point of what we're talking about here. We're talking about how strong Allen is catching the football despite contact up at the top side of the screen. Herbert trusts him. It's a 4th and 4, so you're not going to throw the football away. You got to get rid of the football, and that's what makes people talk about Herbert all they want. Is he elite? Is he this? Is he that? I don't get into those conversations. He's a guy who's been involved in a lot of plays at the NFL level. I think his awareness level is extremely high. And it doesn't take much awareness level here. It's 4th and 4. We got to throw the football. But I see markers of a guy who's absolutely capable of winning a Super Bowl at some point, and I don't mind saying that. Against the Titans as well, I think you got a cover 2 down to the bottom side. Nice route combination down here by Johnston and Allen. It's cover 2. Allen's not getting off really quickly in terms of his route, but they're occupying the safety. I think you're going to see the Lions tag Jerry Jacobs and Kirby Joseph together, probably on the same side as Anzalone, but you get a vertical that's kind of pulled in towards the hash by number 2. That's going to occupy this safety in this, what I would call cover 2. Allen's release, you guys are running out of frame there, so my apologies. Ends up pulling him down to the sideline, and they occupy the safety with Johnston's route, and it's wide open over top of the corner. They've got great design, and when you've got a weapon like that, it kind of makes things easier or more simple to design. Here, let's take a look at how the Lions defend some of these things in terms of a special wide receiver. What they did against the Raiders in Week 8, generally, Cam Sutton went to Davante Adams' side. Adams and Allen are different receivers, but I would say they offer a similar threat, and the Lions' strategy might be the same. Now, Jimmy G clearly missed him on a vertical in the second half, and potentially, I think, on another outside, a deep out. But Cam Sutton had defended him extremely well. This is a 3rd and 9. It's a sack by, I think, Julian Okwara. So Jimmy doesn't get the opportunity to get the ball out. But Sutton down here at the bottom, I think he understands the route that Adams is running. He doesn't necessarily go for the fakes as quickly as other guys do. And I'll show you an example of what I mean later on with Jerry Jacobs. Kind of doesn't matter because of the pressure. But look at the coverage relationship that Sutton had on Adams. Adams kind of pulled up in his route a little bit before I paused the screen here. But the general overall point that I'm trying to get to, and I'll show you multiple plays, is that Cam Sutton did a nice job on Davante Adams. He lined up to his side generally. Later on in the game, the Raiders moved Adams around to get him away from Sutton. It's not like he was shutting him down. That's not what I'm saying, because Adams had opportunities to make plays, including one drop that I'll show you here in a moment. But the point is to try to get him a better matchup, and they felt like moving him over to Jerry Jacobs' side was the better matchup. Sutton reads this inside route by Adams, and Adams is so good at these fakes and then bringing it back in or out to the sideline. Sutton was on it. He was on it, and I think he'll be on it with Keenan Allen as well. It'll be a big matchup because at the catch point, Keenan Allen is so dominant physically. Now, look, Sutton wasn't perfect in that game. Here's a 3rd and 4. Now, I offer to you that he's kind of allowing Adams to release inside. I wonder if it's a drop by Adams, a clear drop. I wonder if there's some kind of coverage mix-up because it looks like Sutton is playing outside, like flats. Maybe Adams just lost him that badly, but Anzalone's playing man on the back. If this is man by Sutton, then clearly he lost this route pretty badly. Adams, unfortunately for the Raiders, ends up dropping it. I think what you're probably going to get is the Chargers starting Adams on one side early in the game, and once they see Sutton to his side consistently, start to do things like this. Now, this play isn't presented to say that I think this is exactly how those things will turn out, but I would say that Anzalone, Jacobs, and Joseph all to one side, opposite Sutton, opposite wherever Allen lines up, can probably handle as many pass concepts as possible to the 2 receiver side. Ends up being a really poorly thrown ball. Bad decision by Jimmy G, clearly. Pairing Jacobs to Joseph's side, I think, does 2 things. It recognizes and understands that Jacobs is probably going to be more likely to go with the first move by Allen. Like he does here, you can see the little out and then up by Adams. And if you ask me, it would allow him to do that, or at least from a coaching standpoint, recognize that's probably what Jacobs is going to do, and then use a great ball hawk, smart free safety like Kirby Joseph to that side to at least give Justin Herbert something to deal with. Now, they might counter with the routes that you saw against the Titans up the right sideline, where number 2 runs directly to the inside of the safety, in this case Kirby Joseph, and then number 1, Keenan Allen, runs out towards the sideline on a vertical, trying to isolate Jacobs on him. That's absolutely what the Chargers could do. It'll be a chess match. This is the chess match I'm trying to present to you that I think the Lions are going to try to set in place, at least set the foundation for it. Guys, let me know what you think of some of those thoughts. Forgive me if you hear papers flipping in the background. I've kind of got to write some of my audio up when I'm going to do long previews like this one. The final element that I want to cover here, and one that Lions fans know is extremely important, along with the other 2 that I've mentioned and some that I will unfortunately not be able to cover, is pressure on the quarterback. The Lions have had games this year where they feasted on pressure, with pressure on the quarterback, sacks, and in some cases a lot of pressures, but not many sacks. 2 games stick out in particular, obviously the Ravens and the Seahawks games, the 2 games they lost. Geno Smith was able to escape some pressure at times. Lamar Jackson in Week 7 was able to escape pressure, and then I thought there was times where Aaron Glenn just didn't decide to bring any. I thought he waited a little too long to recognize we're having trouble getting to him and controlling him being Lamar Jackson. We need to change up our coverage paradigm, and to me that took a little too long to try to adjust, and by the time he did make that adjustment, Todd Monk and the Ravens offensive coordinator switched into run mode on the 4th possession and really changed the dynamic to get a 28-0 lead. This week, I think there's the opportunity for the Lions to get more pressure in an organic manner without exposing themselves on the back end. The Chargers have only allowed 20 sacks in 2023, which is about middle of the pack in the league in terms of sacks allowed. But I'm going to be honest with you, in the 3 games I've watched, the Jets, Cowboys, and Titans, it seems like a lot more. Herbert's very athletic. I would compare him favorably to Geno Smith in terms of moving around and understanding where he can go in the pocket. So far, it seems like there's more sacks. It seems like pressure has had more of an impact on this offense than the statistics and data show. And to compare for you, as a Lions fan, you know how good the Lions' offensive line is. They've only allowed 16 sacks so far this year. The Chargers have allowed 20. That's not a huge amount more, if you ask me. Herbert, at the same time, is completing 67% of his passes, 14 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. Some of these sacks are on stunts, like the first one you saw. Some of them are just organic pressures, where that's tagged to the coverage. Where you've got great coverage. No one's open, to the side where the running back released to. No one is open. I do suspect that people are doing something at times to the Chargers whereby the running back releases to that side. You've got a player who is shifting his coverage to that side to match the numbers or give the Jets, in this case defense, a 4-on-3 advantage. And there's only one interior player here, C.J. Mosley. But I've seen enough situations where there's two inside linebackers there, and one of them definitely seems to be reading the running back and on pass releasing to that side, trying to create a numbers advantage, number one. Number two, also recognize that the guy who released to one side, Austin Eckler, is a favorite target or one of the favorite targets of Justin Herbert. Conversely, when Kelly has been in the backfield, I have not seen as many examples of that coverage scheme or that coverage technique by inside linebackers. Hopefully I said that in a way that makes sense. Maybe something for you as a fan to pay attention to during the game. Herbert's clearly athletic enough to escape plays. This is a 3rd and 8 against the Jets. It's not like you can just bring 4 all game in an organic rush and stay in your rush lanes and just expect to get to him, number one. Number two, expect to contain him all game. There's going to have to be some stunts. There's going to have to be some movement inside of Aiden Hutchinson, among others, and perhaps some 5-man rushes. If you're not organized and disciplined in your rush lanes, I would say that this game looks like the kind where he can have an impact like Geno Smith did occasionally through scrambles and through extending plays. The Lions have to force him to execute concepts to pick up first downs. The previous play that I showed you a moment ago, I'm just going to let this one cycle through for a couple times. You cannot give up cheap first downs like that one against this team because Keenan Allen, Austin Eckler, among others, Palmer, Johnston, they've got multiple talented guys. They're going to generate first downs. They're talented enough offensively that they're going to be able to get things done. You cannot afford to give up 2 or 3 cheap first downs on situations where Herbert escapes pressure like Geno Smith did a couple times in the second half in week 2 and give them another down where their talented offensive players get another opportunity to make plays. The Lions defense is absolutely capable of playing great run defense like we talked about earlier. Covering well. To me, the only part that I'm wondering about in this game is their ability to get pressure. Now, one thing, a lot of these sacks have come on film that I have seen at least on play action concepts. Again, they've only given up 20 sacks all year. So I'm perhaps overstating it some. Based on the film that I've watched, it looks like a larger issue. It sure seems like a large number of them are coming on play action concepts. Perhaps the reason why I think it's a larger issue than the data shows is the defenses I watch. The Cowboys, Titans, and Jets are pretty quality defenses. Maybe there was injuries to the offensive line for the Chargers in 1 or 2 or 3 of those weeks. It's also possible that some of the sacks I saw didn't count on film like that last one because of a penalty. Another play action against the Jets ends up being a sack. It's a flood concept to the boundary, a really anomalous play. There was 2 anomalous plays in this game where I was unsure of what the Chargers were trying to accomplish. It's not that you don't run flood into the boundary. It's that they don't. And seeing it when I did made me feel like they were searching for things to work and searching for ways to get more yards against a really fast, physical defensive front by the Jets. I don't think the Lions offer the same ability to get pressure with just putting 4 fantastic speed rushers out there or 2 fantastic speed rushers and interior guys who can also get to the quarterback. I don't feel like the Lions have the same balance of pass rush that the Jets do. It's an organic rush, just a win against the right guard on a 3rd and 3. It's a mug look. So there's multiple guys walked up to the line of scrimmage. So they don't know, the Chargers O-line doesn't know who's coming. They don't know who's coming on the blitz. 3 guys are dropping out. I feel like a lot of the sacks and pressures I have seen so far have come against their interior offensive linemen, the right guard and left guard. And I don't know if the data, the stats bear that out. I don't look at data analysis services at all. I watch the film, tell you what I saw on film, and for better or for worse, it may be accurate. Hopefully it is. You guys feel free, if you've watched my previews before and the ensuing games, you let me know how accurate you feel like it's been in the past. feel like that could be a real issue against this Lions team. Aiden Hutchinson is the main pass rush guy. Aleem McNeil has 4 sacks as well. He's been a terror on the inside. He had 2 sacks against the Raiders in Week 8, and then they've had the bye last week. They'll come into the Chargers game here Sunday, well-rested, I think with a great game plan defensively. Aleem McNeil is a guy who can swing the balance of the pass rush equation heavily in the Lions' favor. Those two, McNeil and Hutchinson, are the main 2 guys in terms of sacks. Hutchinson has 4.5. He's been quiet in the last 3 weeks in terms of sack output. Aleem McNeil has 4. Granted, like I said, he had 2 in this game against the Raiders. Against interior guys, this is where I think the Lions may have a matchup they can win. I don't mean any disrespect towards the guys the Chargers have. Perhaps some of the film I watched of their left guard and right guard was in games where the starters were injured. I have no idea. I just know that Aleem McNeil is a badass. He's having a great season, and I can see him having an impact in this game. Isaiah Buggs is another one. Now, he's one of 6 guys who only has 1 sack. But Buggs is huge, first of all, extremely physical, and once he gets coming downhill, he's a real problem on the interior. There's multiple guys that get involved in the pressure for the Lions. However, in the games where they've got 0 pressure at all, that's where they've had trouble. Alex Anzalone additionally has 3 sacks. He's putting together a whale of a season, if you ask me. Like I said earlier, great coverage into the boundary, which is where he's typically going to be lined up. Ball's on the right hash. The boundary or short side of the field is down here. This is the field or the wide side. And Anzalone's just going to go on a little delayed B-gap blitz. He's also got 3 sacks. Playing great against the run, like we talked about earlier. This guy's putting up a fantastic season. I have no idea what his overall stats are, but the film that I watch at least shows me that he's playing a great inside linebacker position. Last play of the game here against the Raiders, something I should have covered earlier. A little bit of a coverage variation. I think this is Anzalone's sack to finish the game. He's up here, but up at the top, you've got Sutton on Adams. And in the situations where they want to play man and bring a little bit more pressure against the Chargers, you might see this. This is trail man up here to the top. So Sutton is basically going to allow Adams to beat him. I had the wrong safety there. My apologies. He's going to basically allow Adams to beat him, but the safety is over the top to that side. And Sutton's job is to be underneath, and he's taking away outside leverage. You can see the leverage that he's taking, giving the safety inside leverage. There's nowhere to go here with the football. Now, Aaron Rodgers, when he played with Davante Adams, he'd figure out a way to get it done. But that's not Aaron Rodgers back there, number 1. Number 2, the pressure, in this case by Anzalone, was able to get there. I think that the Lions are going to have to get pressure on Herbert and finish these plays. And to me, the quickest and simplest and easiest way to get it done is for Aiden Hutchinson to show up. And look, he's had a brilliant year. 4.5 sacks, 10 quarterback hits. I think he's played great football for most of the season, starting with that Thursday Night Football opener against the Chiefs, where I think he played really well, even though he wasn't credited with the sack. However, he's been quiet the last 3 weeks. He did have this interception against the Panthers, an unbelievable play on a tight end screen to the top side. Without a sack for 12 consecutive quarters, or 3 consecutive games, I should say, it will be a huge boost for this Lions defense if Hutchinson could get involved in the pass game in a manner that disrupts the Chargers' protection schemes. And I think he can do it. Absent Hutchinson coming out there and getting a sack and a half and 3 quarterback pressures, or maybe 2 sacks and 2 pressures. Absent that, they need to do a great job on Keenan Allen. And I think that means Cam Sutton following Keenan Allen wherever he goes as best they can until such time that the Chargers start to adjust and move Keenan Allen around some. Number 2, Lions have to shut down or at least significantly slow down the Chargers' run game. Identify when Eckler's on the field versus Kelly and the concurrent change in the pass threat from the running back position. There's some other talented wide receivers I didn't mention for the Chargers, but I think Keenan Allen is the head of the snake there. And they get and if you add in Hutchinson having a big performance on top of that, which I think he's capable of in any game, then it really improves. That's a winning formula defensively for this Lions team. They don't necessarily need to get 5 sacks this week, but I think they need to get at least consistent pressure on Herbert, especially in those third down situations. without exposing themselves on the back end, bringing so much pressure to get to the quarterback that they open themselves up to big plays down the field later. I really like the Lions' chances in this game. I think their defense is really severely underrated by a lot of people across the NFL or commentators and people on social media. If they avoid turnovers and can be +1 in the turnover margin, I think Lions have a great chance to go out there and get a win and come out 7-2 out of the bye. I really would like to be able to do a reaction video to this one, but it's going to be tough for me to watch it, being as the Ravens play at 1 p.m. on Sunday. So I'm going to try to pull off being able to watch the second half of the Lions game and get you guys some type of reaction video late Sunday night. Let me know if you'd be interested in that. It's been an extremely busy week, only able to get one Lions video done. I wanted to get this one finished for you guys on Saturday morning, so Saturday evening's a little bit late. Appreciate you guys checking the video out. If you watch this long, let me know what you think of the video in the comment section. And if you think other Lions fans would enjoy this long-form preview of the Lions' visit to the Chargers out in L.A. in Week 10, then please consider grabbing a link to this video, sharing it out on social media to help this content get more reach.